I want you to picture something for a second. Just really visualize this. You are standing in a small, completely frozen limestone cave.
Which is already a terrifying thought.
Right. And you are like 8,500 meters in the sky. You're tucked right inside Mount Everest's infamous death zone. And right there, nestled under this rocky alcove, is a man who has literally been frozen in time for 3 decades.
Yeah, 30 years. Just wow.
He's curled up on his side. He has a red fleece pulled tightly over his face. And he is wearing a pair of these incredibly distinct, bright, lime-colored boots.
It's a haunting image, truly. And for anyone who, follows high-altitude mountaineering, it's an immediately recognizable one.
It really is. So welcome to this deep dive. Today we are taking you up to that exact cave on the Northeast Ridge. We've got a stack of fascinating source material detailing a brand new, highly complex recovery mission being organized right now on Mount Everest.
Yeah, it's a massive undertaking.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the 30-year history of this specific climber, who is known to the world simply as Green Boots. We are going to uncover a truly shocking recent twist regarding his identity, and we're going to break down the brutal physical mechanics and the incredibly complex realities of high-altitude body recovery.
Because, this isn't just a story about a mountain or even just about a tragedy. It's a story about human limits, really, and the extreme logistics of operating in an environment that is completely hostile to life.
Yeah, hostile is the perfect word for it.
Right. It's an exploration of the murky gray area of death zone operations. And perhaps most profoundly, it examines the precise mechanics of how a human being, someone with a family, a history, a real name, is transformed by extreme geography into a literal navigational landmark.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to really understand why bringing this particular climber down requires such a massive multinational undertaking, we first have to understand the reality of where and how he has remained for 30 years.
Yeah, he's not just sitting there.
Right, he isn't just lost on the mountain, he is integrated into it.
Right. If you track back to the 1996 climbing season, which is widely documented, for the catastrophic blizzard that struck the mountain, you have an environment operating at the extreme edge of physics.
We're talking ambient temperatures of minus 30 degrees Celsius.
Exactly. Minus 30 and sustained hurricane force winds. So the climber we know as Green Boots was on the Northeast Ridge route, accessing the summit from the Tibet side. And he made it to within 350 meters of the peak.
So close.
Incredibly close. But the storm forced him into that small limestone cave. He pulled his red fleece up over his face, likely trying to, shield his skin from the wind chill, and he succumbed to exposure.
And because of the intense cold and the total lack of atmospheric moisture up there, the environment effectively locks everything in place, like a time capsule.
Yeah, exactly like a time capsule.
He stayed there, fully clothed, curled up in a fetal position to conserve heat. And because of those bright, lime-colored Koflak boots he was wearing, he became known universally as Green Boots. But here's the part that completely shifts the paradigm of how we think about high-altitude climbing.
This is the wild part.
It really is. For 30 years, this human being has essentially been utilized as a morbid GPS checkpoint for other climbers pushing for the summit. You literally have expedition leaders radioing back to base camp to report their pace by saying, we have reached Green Boots.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is how this perfectly illustrates the surreal psychological space of the death zone. At 8,500 meters, your brain is operating on a tiny fraction of its normal oxygen supply.
You're barely functioning.
Barely. Cognitive function narrows entirely to immediate survival, pacing, and navigation. So in that environment, the normal human taboos about death, the reverence, the instinct to create distance or perform a ritual, they're completely overridden by biological necessity.
Yeah, you just don't have the luxury of grief.
Exactly. When you are navigating this endless expanse of gray rock and white snow, a neon green boot is a highly visible static marker. The limestone cave provides a necessary break from the wind, so the practical, life-saving utility of that specific location simply supersedes the tragedy of the body occupying it.
It's pure pragmatism. The source material details this one encounter in 2006 by cheering Jangbu Sherpa.
Right, yeah.
He was on his first summit push from the north side, ducked into that exact rocky outcrop to escape the wind, and he found the floor covered in a fresh dusting of snow. He recounted to The Guardian how he literally just brushed the snow away to clear a spot, and history was right there staring back at him.
Just inches away?
Yeah. The neon boots were completely intact.
And, the climbing community has operated for decades under the assumption that they knew exactly whose history that was, but the narrative has fundamentally fractured recently.
Totally fractured.
Yeah, a new government tender document has surfaced that just completely upends the accepted historical record of that 1996 expedition.
This is where the bureaucracy of the situation clashes violently with the geography. Because since 1996, the universally accepted belief was that Green Boots was a climber named Soang Palger.
Right.
He was part of an Indo-Tibetan border police expedition, the ITBP, and they were attempting a historic first Indian ascent of Everest from the north side.
It was a three-man summit push. Paljor, along with two of his teammates, pushed for the top on the exact same day that massive blizzard hit, and none of the three men made it back to their high camp.
So sad.
It is. And for 30 years, the global climbing community, the media, expedition guides, they universally identified the man in the green boots as Paljor.
But then, Indian authorities released a new operational plan. It's this official government tender document asking specialized high-altitude recovery companies to bid on a mission to finally retrieve the body.
And this is where it gets weird.
Yeah, in this legally binding procurement document, they suddenly identify the climber in the cave as someone else entirely. They name him Dorje Morup.
Who was another member of that exact same three-man ITBP summit team.
Right. Which fundamentally rewrites the geographic lore of the Northeast Ridge.
Wait, so I have to push back on the mechanics of this because the logistics of this sudden name swap are just wild to me.
Oh, they are.
You're telling me that after 3 decades of the whole world calling this man Soang Palger, an official government procurement document just casually swaps the name to Dorje Morup? Like, do they cite new DNA evidence? Did they send an expedition up to check his gear tags? What happened?
Well, that is the administrative mystery at the center of this new mission. The tender document itself vaguely claims that the identification of Morup has been confirmed through a, quote, prior verification process conducted under an earlier tender or technical assessment.
But no actual proof.
Exactly. There is absolutely no methodology provided. U.S. mountaineer and Everest chronicler Alan Arnett reviewed the documents and noted the complete lack of detail regarding how this verification supposedly occurred. It feels like an attempt to apply sea-level certainty to a death zone reality. You have this incredibly public monument to a specific person, and suddenly a piece of official paperwork just reassigns the identity to process a contract.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
I mean, the government couldn't issue a legal tender to retrieve green boots. They needed a legal name for the procurement paperwork, which seemingly forced the designation of Morup just to trigger the mission.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really highlights the absolute fog of extreme altitude operations. It shows how establishing historical fact in a lethal environment is nearly impossible.
Because no one was there to see it.
Right. Consider the variables of that 1996 ITBP team. Both men died on the same day. Both men were on the same team. They were wearing standard issue expedition gear provided by the border police.
So they probably dressed alike.
Exactly. When a storm of that magnitude hits, visibility drops to 0, teams get separated, and, well, the mountain simply does not keep records.
And because no one from that summit push survived, there are no primary witnesses to say who wore what boots or who took shelter in which cave.
Precisely. And now, 30 years later, a legal mechanism is requiring definitive identification to authorize a massive logistical operation.
Wow.
But whether the climber is Paljor or Morup, the Indian government has officially named Morup on the tender and issued a mandate to bring him down to Delhi by October.
Which shifts this entire scenario from a bureaucratic mystery into a terrifying physical reality.
Very terrifying.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly incredibly intense. The logistics of how a team actually brings a body down from 8,500 meters. The source material outlines the requirements for the company's bidding on this contract. It demands a specialist team of at least 6 Sherpas.
And not just any Sherpas.
Right. These have to be elite operators who have summited Everest multiple times.
The physical demands are staggering. They are operating in an environment where the available oxygen is roughly 1/3 of what it is at sea level.
1/3. I can't even imagine trying to breathe, let alone work.
Yeah, it's brutal. Makalu Adventure, which is a Nepal-based expedition company evaluating the tender, they estimated that this retrieval mission would take 40 days from start to finish.
Because they can't just sprint up the mountain.
Yeah.
A 40-day timeline means they are establishing a massive logistical chain. They have to do acclimatization rotations, set up a relay system between base camp and the higher camps, and haul up thousands of meters of rope specifically for rigging.
Thousands of meters.
And because the tender stipulates completion by October, they're forced to navigate the heavy monsoon weather conditions that dominate the Himalayas between June and October.
Which is essentially the worst time to be up there. You're introducing heavier snowfall, drastically increased avalanche risk, and highly unstable ice formations.
Unbelievable.
And the financial cost reflects that operational hazard. Alan Arnett estimates a specialist team would require around $150,000 just to execute this single expedition.
Which brings us to the core physics of what they are actually trying to move. Chiring Jangbu Sherpa, the same man who encountered green boots in 2006, is the founder of Everest Sherpa Expedition and has executed numerous high-altitude recoveries himself.
He knows the stuff inside and out.
He really does. And he explains that an iced-up body, fully encased in technical climbing gear, can weigh up to 200 kilograms. That's over 440 pounds.
Yeah, and it's critical to understand the composition of that weight. It is not just the mass of a human body.
Right.
It is a human body encased in thick layers of down clothing, a heavy climbing harness, and double-layered boots. For 30 years, that entire package has been accumulating ambient moisture, freezing, thawing slightly in the direct sun, and refreezing into a solid, monolithic block of ice.
I was trying to visualize the mechanics of this operation as I read through the sources, and it's just, we aren't talking about carrying a heavy backpack.
Not at all.
Imagine trying to maneuver a heavy, rigid, thickly branched tree trunk, or like a 400-pound grand piano, down a narrow, jagged, 45-degree staircase made entirely of brittle ice.
While breathing through a straw.
Yes. Every protruding branch, or limb, acts as an anchor against the rock. The friction coefficient is just a nightmare. And the recovery team has to manage this while balancing on their own crampons, managing their own oxygen flow, and coordinating a complex belay system.
The rigidity of the load is the primary operational hazard. Chiring Jangbu detailed how limbs freeze solid at highly awkward angles.
Because of how they died.
Right. When a person dies of extreme exposure, the body naturally curls up into a tight fetal position to conserve core temperature, exactly as green boots did in that cave.
So the recovery team is dealing with the 200-kilogram asymmetrical mass. The arms and legs are sticking out, catching on limestone outcroppings, digging into the snowpack, and acting as a physical brake against the ropes.
Exactly. Lowering an object with that kind of complex geometry down a sheer face requires constant manual redirection. It requires climbers to physically unsnag the body from the terrain while suspended on the same precarious ice wall.
That sounds impossible.
And Chiring Jangbu made a very stark admission about the extreme measures required to maintain the safety of the living climbers during these extractions.
Yeah, this detail in the source material is jarring, but it makes complete mechanical sense when you think about it. He stated that in certain recovery scenarios, the team has absolutely no choice but to amputate an unbendable limb from the deceased climber.
Yeah, they do it to alter the geometry of the load.
That is just, wow.
If a frozen arm or leg is continuously anchoring the body to the mountain and threatening to pull the belay team off the face, they have to remove the snagging point to safely lower the mass. He referred to it as a gut-wrenching act, but stated clearly, quote, "There's no choice to do another way."
The psychological load of that decision is immense. You are operating in a severe hypoxic state. Your own survival is entirely dependent on your pacing and your anchor points, and you have to execute a clinical amputation on a frozen fellow climber just to keep the entire team from being pulled off the mountain.
It demands supreme, almost mechanical decision-making in an environment that actively degrades your cognitive processing.
Truly.
It is a profound physical and psychological burden placed squarely on the shoulders of the Sherpa teams, which forces us to examine the deeper layer of this entire operation. Because the extraction process is so mechanically dangerous, it creates a massive friction point regarding the philosophy of retrieval.
Yeah. Just because an entity can fund a $150,000 mission to bring a climber down.
Yeah.
Should they?
Right.
So what does this all mean for you and me when we look at the broader landscape of the mountain? The sources indicate there are roughly 200 bodies still resting on Everest.
200, yeah.
You have grieving families, governments, and organizations making inquiries to retrieve their people. And on one hand, you have the very understandable desire for closure, a grave that a family can visit, a proper return of a citizen.
Of course.
But on the other hand, you have the sheer physical math of risking 6 living climbers to retrieve one deceased one.
This raises an important question about the cultural and spiritual impact of these operations. We have to consider the perspective of the Sherpa community executing these missions.
Right, because they're the ones doing the actual work.
Exactly. Alan Arnett points out that Sherpas are predominantly Buddhist, and they view Chomolungma, which is their name for Everest, as a deeply sacred space.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about the religious aspect.
Yeah, culturally and religiously, many do not believe in desecrating bodies, and in several traditions, they prefer not to interact with the dead at all.
So an operation like this is essentially asking a specialized team to violate their own spiritual beliefs, navigate the highest risk terrain on Earth during the monsoon season, and execute a highly traumatic mechanical extraction.
It's a huge ask. Guy Cotter, who is a highly experienced New Zealand slimer and operates expeditions in the Himalayas, offers a deeply informed perspective on this tension.
Right.
In 1997, Cotter actually coordinated the retrieval of a climber who had died the exact same year as the ITBP team.
So he understands the exact operational math of a death zone recovery.
He knows it intimately. Regarding the new mission for Green Boots, Cotter stated, "It would have been a good thing to have done a long time before now." He acknowledges the deep value of bringing a body home for the family's closure.
Right, which makes sense.
But he draws a massive line in the snow regarding the execution. He insists that closure is only justified, quote, as long as it's not putting other people at undue risk.
He describes it as a very thin line.
Because the history of the mountain is full of cascading tragedies, Cotter explicitly warns that there have been multiple situations where rescuers and recovery teams have died trying to bring a body down.
That is just devastating.
It is. The mountain's physics do not care about the nobility of a recovery mission. A compromised anchor or a sudden avalanche will take the living just as quickly as it took the dead.
And adding another layer of complexity to this is the stated intent of the climbers themselves. Arnett notes a really critical detail regarding the mindset of the people who actually step into the death zone.
Yeah, this is a really important point.
Many highly experienced climbers explicitly document before their expeditions that if they die on the mountain, they wish to be left there.
They view the high Himalayas as the ultimate climber's resting place. The environment they dedicated their lives to mastering becomes their permanent grave.
Wow.
The only caveat is that they usually request their team to move them out of sight or off the main ropes out of respect for the climbers coming behind them.
Which makes total sense. I mean, no one wants their legacy to be a navigational waypoint.
Exactly.
Which actually brings up an interesting piece of modern Everest lore regarding Green Boots. Over the past decade, there have been several unconfirmed reports that his body was finally moved or respectfully buried under a cairn of stones by passing climbers.
Yeah, the geography of Everest is constantly shifting, and rumors amplify quickly. But Arnett is firm on this point based on his deep network within the current climbing community.
So he's still there.
He has spoken with recent expedition leaders who insist that Green Boots remains in that exact same limestone cave, quote, right where he's always been.
It's a heavy realization. We've navigated a lot of incredibly dense terrain today. We started with the chilling visual reality of those neon green boots serving as critical infrastructure for climbers navigating the death zone.
I know.
We unpacked the bizarre bureaucratic mechanics of a government issuing a tender that effectively swaps a geographical landmark's identity from Sompeljour to Dorje Morup after 30 years.
Still wild to me.
And we broke down the agonizing physical friction, the complex rigging, and the intense moral calculus of asking a team of Sherpas to maneuver a 200-kilogram rigid block of history down the world's most dangerous slopes.
I think the most vital takeaway from synthesizing all these sources is a shift in perspective. It is so easy to consume the media surrounding Everest, the best-selling books, the high-definition documentaries, the summit selfies.
Well, yeah, the selfies are everywhere now.
Yeah. Right. It's easy to process the entire ecosystem as a thrilling, extreme adventure sport. But studying the logistics of a recovery mission forces you to confront the permanent, frozen consequences of that ambition. The mountain does not reset when the weather window closes. Every triumph and every tragedy remains exactly where it occurred, locked in the ice.
It truly is a museum of human ambition and human limit, perfectly preserved at 8,500 meters.
It really is.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought. Something to consider the next time you read an article about a new Everest record or see a photo of the summit ridge. Imagine you are a climber who fully understands the physics, the logistics, and the extreme risks of the death zone.
Really put yourself in their boots.
Yeah. If you knew that organizing a mission to bring you home might cost a team of Sherpas their own lives, what would you put in your will? Would you demand to be returned to your family at any cost, prioritizing their closure above all else? Or would you choose to integrate into the mountain, becoming a permanent, silent guardian, warning future climbers of the storm?
It forces you to weigh the value of the living against the honor of the dead.
It really does. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.